Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm a person in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery for 15 years from my addiction to alcohol. I believe I was kind of addicted to alcohol right from the beginning. I still have that euphoric recall of the first time I drank. It was with three of my friends from high school. I was about 16. We were in my friend's basement drinking his dad's beer, and then we went out to the local movie theater, and I wasn't shy and introverted anymore. I didn't care what people thought. We were kind of acting like goofballs in the movie theater, and it was a great old time. Um, and from then on, alcohol was always kind of in my thoughts. I had that obsession with alcohol, and I kind of knew it was something to be controlled right at the beginning. I was a fairly serious athlete in high school, and I just knew I would kind of blow it if I drank during cross country or track season, so I didn't. But then when it wasn't the seasons, which were kind of short seasons, it was game on anytime I could be around it and do it. And then I went to college at the University of Pittsburgh, and I joined a fraternity, and I was really off to the races then. Um, and I didn't get in trouble like every time I drank, but every time I had trouble, like doing something embarrassing, doing something illegal, doing something obnoxious to a woman. It was always when I was drinking. And that was just kind of a pattern that went on and on and on. And alcohol wasn't the only substance I used, especially when I was in college. Um, Alcohol was always my favorite. I did have a short bout where I kind of had a problem with cocaine also, because that I could stay up later and drink, and I was kind of getting it free from a lady friend of mine, and but I knew that was a problem. And part of my decision to join the Pennsylvania Army National Guard was just so I could get away from that environment and stop using that. And there were other reasons too, like the financial aid and all that. But I used the fact that I quit cocaine when I decided to lie to myself for the next 20 years, saying I could quit alcohol anytime I wanted, because I did that. And I didn't really quit anything. I quit doing the cocaine, and I probably started drinking more, and I was, still off to the races with that. And I didn't really quit anything at all. And that pattern just continued like after college. There were failed relationships. Near the end, I had gotten separated, and the drinking got even worse. So I was on my way to getting a divorce. I'd lost one professional job due to my drinking, and I was on my way to losing my second one. I'd had warnings about calling off or being late on Mondays, because it was really bad on the weekends. It was bad every day, but it was worse then. And I finally got to a point where I couldn't live with the alcohol. I couldn't live without it. And there was another Monday after I'd been all warned about like calling off, and I just couldn't get up and go to work. And in my alcohol insanity, I came up with this grand plan to sit at home and just drink myself to death. And I had enough vodka and beer that I probably came really close to doing that. And I was just at that point where I couldn't live with the alcohol, and I couldn't live without it, and I really didn't know what to do. And in the meantime, I had people offering to help me. I had a supervisor at my mental health job who he said, if you need help, Jeff, just say so and we'll get you help. And, but I was on that path where I was going to handle it myself. And I kept lying to myself about the unmanageability of the drinking, and the whole concept of like being powerless over my use just was kind of foreign to me. And I just had to keep going until I got to that bottom I could believe it. And that whole incident where I was trying to drink myself to death was kind of that bottom I could believe it. Somewhere in the middle of all that self-created chaos, I remember sitting on my back porch, looking up at the sky, and just saying, "Help me." And then about the fourth day into all that nonsense, it was a day I was supposed to have been training all my colleagues who were therapists, including my estranged wife and including my supervisor, first aid. And when I didn't show up to that, like everyone started to really think it was serious. People started showing up at my house. I had hidden my truck behind my house. I had my house locked. I was passed out. They knocked on the door. They were looking all in my backyard, all over the place. Finally, I heard my father's panicked voice, like asking me to just open the door, and I did. And I just kind of gave up that whole struggle of, and I knew like just okay, I'll do whatever. And my estranged wife and my father kind of talked me into going to get help at the VA. I had VA coverage because I'd just come off a deployment like 2 years earlier. And I went to that detox, and that was, and they took my blood alcohol level down there, and it had been quite a few hours since I drank, and it was still like 3 something, 0.3 something. And I probably should have died, but I didn't. You know, I think my higher power had a bigger plan. And I remember that first night in detox in that hospital bed all alone. That was like one of the longest nights ever. And I just knew that the party was over and I just needed to do whatever. And I kind of had that gift of desperation that I was going to do whatever anyone suggested to try to get better. You know, because I did kind of want to live for my sons. And I was told later when I got around people in recovery, like I really need to want to do it for myself. And if I was honest with myself, I wanted to live so I could see my sons grow up. They were like 6 and 8 at the time. And when it was time to leave that detox, I thought for sure they were going to send me to a rehab, but they didn't. I didn't quite meet the VA's definition of needing to go to a rehab. I'm sure anywhere else I probably would have went to a rehab, but I had a job to go back to. Go in there to get help, save my job with that supervisor I was talking about. And they just suggested I start going to sober support meetings and get around other people in recovery and do what they did to stay sober. And because I had that gift of desperation, I did just that. They also gave me outpatient at the VA, but the outpatient person I talked to, his whole spiel was to get me to go to AA or to the sober support meeting, and I did that. First day out of that detox, I went to a sober support meeting, and I remember the second one I went to. It was a medium-sized meeting. There were about 20 people, and they asked if there was anyone new, and I raised my hand, and they went around and they talked about how their lives have become unmanageable using alcohol, and then how they got better by being around other people in recovery and getting honest with themselves and trying to live life on life's terms. And I don't know, I could definitely identify with like their stories of the alcohol use. And the thing I couldn't identify with was the hope they had, but I wanted some of that. And I just kind of did whatever they suggested. They suggested that since I drank every day, maybe I should go to one of those sober support meetings every day. And I did that for the first 3 months. And they suggested I get a sponsor, a mentor, if you will. And I did that like within the first 2 weeks. And I did start to get honest with myself. And I did start to reconnect with the idea of having a higher power. Before that, I would say I probably had a higher power that kind of a John Denver kind of, like I would say thank you if I saw a nice sunset or sunrise, but I didn't particularly think any kind of higher power had anything to do with my day-to-day life. And I kind of learned through being around people in recovery that that wasn't true. And the advice of the people in that group, I started to pray every day, and I started to honestly look at the wreckage of my past and started to realize I wasn't the uniquely horrible drinker that I thought I was. I was just kind of your average person with the disease of being addicted to alcohol. And I don't know, that kind of made it easier to keep going forward and just learn how to live life on life's terms and do simple things that they suggested, like just do the next right thing. Don't worry about all the stuff in the future, and do what you can to clean up that wreckage of the past. And I tried to make amends to everyone I could. Some of them were just going to be living amends, like to my 2 sons. And I had moments where I saw that living amends was really working. I remember being probably about 3 years sober, and I didn't really think that my sons saw that big a difference in me, because that doesn't really come up when you have young kids. And my oldest son, who was 8 when I got sober, and he was probably 11 at the time, he heard me and his mom talking, and she was just frustrated because she wanted me to watch the kids on a Monday, and that was when my home group, or the sober support group, was. And she's like, "You really need to go to that every Monday." And my son, who was 11 at the time, chimed in at the top of his voice and said, "Yes, he does." And that's when I kind of realized how big a difference it made in his life, and probably his brother's life and everything. And my ex-wife never brought that up again either, about me missing the meeting on Monday night, especially if he was around. And things just got better the longer I stayed in recovery. And one of the things I found surprising about the whole process and being in recovery was that how much of a win-win it is. One of the people who helped me the most get sober, he would always thank me every time I called him for help. And he said I was helping him stay sober. And that just sounded kind of crazy to me at first. But the longer I did it, the more I began to believe that. And then when I got to the point where I would start helping people, I definitely understood that. Because if I was helping them stay sober, it always felt like it was helping me more stay sober. And people have gone through the same addiction kind of have this special kind of communication with each other because they've gone through the same thing. I find it very similar to the same kind of camaraderie and just having gone through something you survived that I have with some of my fellow combat vets. And you can just be totally honest and blunt and just accept what each other has to say. And you don't need to really explain the horrible things because you both know. It's a special kind of connection. And that's a lot of the reason I'm sober to this day, because there were people who took the time to share how they got sober and just encourage me to do that and just make it be all right. And thank me for doing that and keeping them sober. It was a beautiful win-win. So if there's anyone out there struggling, the first thing you need to do is just ask for help. One of my favorite AA speakers, he was on a speaker tape. He had an acronym for everything, but I particularly liked the acronym he had for ASK. ASK, that's your ass saving kit. And that has absolutely been my experience. If I wanted to drink, I called someone. If I was in a bad place where it might even lead me to wanting to drink, like the relationship ends, you laid out from a job, I would call someone else who was in recovery. And I wouldn't get all caught up in my thoughts and that circus I would get in my head that I used to when I was drinking. And I would be able to focus on what the next right thing to do was, and then just take that step. So today I sponsor people, and I still go to meetings like 2 to 3 times a week, and I kind of look at that as my medicine to stay sober. And I like going to meetings. I hear a lot of positive things there about how to just live life on life's terms. And I find it very spiritual. I actually find it more spiritual than going to church, which I do on occasion too. And people talk about how their higher power helped them turn everything around, and just how their life got. The one sponsor I have now, he's a Vietnam vet, and he's been sober for 40 years. And he's always told me all along that, the longer you do it, it just keeps getting better. And I always thought that was kind of BS. He was telling me to motivate me to keep going. But the longer I do this, the more I really believe him, because like I said at the beginning, it's been 15 years and it just continues to get better because I just keep doing the deal like was suggested to me by other people in recovery. So if there's anyone out there who's struggling with an addiction, I just want you to know there's help out there. There's the Susquehanna County Recovery Alliance at recovery.org. And they have a lot of stuff there, different sober support meetings you can go to, different treatment options. There's all kinds of different pathways to recovery. But the most important thing is to know that you're not alone. And that there's other people out there who've gone through just what you've gone through or very similar to it. Even though you probably think like you're just uniquely horrible, just like I did. The most important thing you can do is make that decision to ask for help. Like I said earlier, that's ASK, that's your ass saving kit, and that could save your life. And maybe someday you'll even talk to someone like me and help me stay sober even longer.